One more to go, fellas, with the Mets and the Braves coming up tonight. Max Fried, Jacob deGrom. Doesn't get any better than that, than what you're going to see tonight. And we were talking before the show. I think the series so far kind of a mirror of what happened in New York to this point. Now, I would say it would be a nice, complete mirror if the Braves win tonight, but the Braves dominated the first two ball games. Last night, it looked like the Mets were going to run away with it. Braves come back, make it interesting. Mets win. That was the one win the Braves got in New York. They were up 8-0, had to hold on, hope and pray that they could win that game. They did. Then the Mets won the next game. So see if the Braves can get something working tonight. Positives, though, outside of Edwin Diaz, you're working over that bullpen. I mean, everybody that the Mets brought in started getting rocked around the ballpark last night, and that would be my only criticism. You're coming back. You have the Mets on the rope last night, and with 2 outs, any other time I'd say, okay, but with 2 outs, the comeback is almost there with Dansby at the plate, who has been performing well. Ronald Acuna steals and gets thrown out. And you just look back at it and say, that might have been the play of the ballgame, if you leave, because I think Dansby comes up later, not against Edwin Diaz, who came in the 8th, comes back up in the 9th inning and gets a base knock. And you're going, not saying that's 100% correlation. I know people hate when you try to do that, but I think in that situation, we've seen Ronald Acuna score from first on a single. Like, you're in scoring position. I think that was unnecessary risk, and you had a chance potentially to win that ball game last night. I think that was the Denny Green game. We had him on the ropes, and we let him off the hook. Had the bullpen struggling a little bit, had the tying run at first base, and you let him off the hook. And then you come in and the Mets score a couple more runs, and that's the ball game. And even then, the Braves come back and lose by 2. But so many things last night. If Jake Odorizzi doesn't suck from the jump, you probably have a chance. Well, what did I say wrong? 1 pitch, 1 homer. Next batter, another homer. Like what? Like that's not inaccurate. You get a rain delay, he settles down, whatever, pitch is much better. But if Jake Odorizzi's first 2 innings don't go the way they go, you have a chance to win that ball game last night. So it stinks you lost, but I thought some positives in there. I thought at times just a little too aggressive in the wrong moment, and you could have won last night. You shove it, you move on, and hope you get DeGrom today.
No, this series has further affirmed that you can compete with the Mets. I think, winning the first 2, and then last night, like you said, I mean, I think I even texted you guys, oh my goodness, the first inning, you have 2 home runs in the first inning, and then all of a sudden you blink and it's 4-0 or 5-0 or whatever, and 4-1, whatever it was. And you're looking around going, okay, maybe this is going to be one of those games where the Mets go on to win 10-1 or 10-2. And for as much as your 13-1 win came with momentum, maybe the Mets are getting some of that back. And no, the Braves battled back. The Braves had their opportunities. So even in a losing effort against one of the best pitchers of this generation in Max Scherzer, and granted, most of the production came against the bullpen, but still, in a game where Max Scherzer was starting, you showed, even after a terrible start from Jake Odorizzi at the beginning of the game, you showed that you could battle back and be right there with a chance to win the ball game against the Mets. If you win tonight, you win the series. And I think this is a critical game. And yes, Kevin, I know you and others could say, come on, man, it's mid-August. But remember, you are chasing the Mets. And I'm not talking about the wild card here, because I know earlier today, Ben, in the show meeting, you said, listen, the Braves are in a great spot in the wild card. And you're right. I think they're 6.5 or 7 up over the Phillies in the wild card. You're in a wonderful spot there. But in terms of winning the division, I think you need to win tonight. You need to win the series. You have Houston this weekend. Let's not forget that, which is going to be difficult. I think the Mets' schedule, for the most part, is a little easier down the stretch than Atlanta. Now, Atlanta's going to get more chances with New York. But I think just for kind of logically looking at it, you need to win tonight. And it's DeGrom, but you have Max Fried. I mean, Max Fried and Jake DeGrom, as great as Jake DeGrom's ERA is, Max Fried is less than a run off from that. So they have their ace, you have your ace. And I think you feel like at home, with the way you've played in this series, you can win this game. Ben, I mean, I think you feel like you should win this game. And if you win this game and you enter the weekend at 3.5, get it back to 3.5, that is very manageable. You have turned the tide of momentum after what was a bad series up in New York. The phraseology must win in terms of winning the NL East. Maybe that's tough. That It kind of feels like that to me. Maybe that's unfair, but this is a big, big game tonight.
It is. And look, Grissom, Grossman, those guys. I mean, Michael Harris and the young guys. I mean, the new guys finding a way to go out there and get it done. The rain delay definitely helped. I don't know what happened between before and after the rain delay, but you will appreciate it. And I think when you think about a guy like Matt Scherzer, I know Scherzer is that dude, but that strike zone was definitely moving for him. And I'm just saying some of those, but it's how the game ended. Most teams, you talk about a Mets team that go up the way they did. Most teams, and that's it, they don't battle back. But this Braves team, they find a way to get runs and bunches. I do think that Ronald Acuna was just trying to be aggressive. And obviously, like you mentioned, Kevin, next batter, he goes yard. Who knows what it have been had he not been aggressive. But I think if anything, that the Braves are showing the Mets, man, we're going to make y'all beat us. We're going to make – if the only way y'all beating us right now was y'all aces, which, game 3, you got it. Now you got DeGrom tonight. I think the thing about the Braves is it starts with who's on the mound. You can see that. And I think for the night game, Max Fried understands that this is a playoff atmosphere. It's what you talk about, Kevin. The Mets and the Braves, yes, you got, yes, you always got the Yankees and the Red Sox, but it's a very, 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 very good rivalry. You're talking about what the Braves and the Mets are doing. We knew going into the season, the best division in baseball was going to be the NL East. Kevin, did you say what? 3 of the top 6 records in the bigs and all the bigs?
Yeah,
are in the NL East. So I think that for the Braves, it's about confidence. It's a psyche thing right now because. Coming out of that previous Mets series, it wasn't much to talk about. It really, really wasn't. And I think that, I'm looking at Scherzer's face when he goes out of the game. He's looking around like, dude, why can't we just get rid of these dudes? Like, why can't we just put them away? I think the Braves bats came in out. Ronald Acuna last at bat, man, I thought he got a hold of that thing. And obviously, that was I was like, oh, he got under it. I think for anything, BJ, it's okay. Yes, it is a must win. we going to say must wins for the Braves here on out because of, from playoff standings. We're just not used to the Braves not winning the division. So when we talk about that's based off the previous 4 seasons. You just expect the Braves to win it. The goal is to get into the playoffs, and you can see what happens with it. The Braves get a big win tonight, coming, getting ready for those Astros. You would say, hey, man, we didn't have our best outing against Scherzer, still had a chance to win. Most teams cannot say that. It was over. By the time Scherzer goes, that's it. The game's over. They're just trying to get the next way.
To that point, to your point and to Kevin's point, if Odorizzi is not terrible in the first inning, it's a different ball game.
But the thing is, too, I think what happens is give the Braves a lot of credit for being, a second half, I guess like late innings ball club, because I think what happens is, yes, it was bad at first. You look around, here we go again because of who was against. I want to say, I could be wrong. I think Pete Alonso's first hit was last night. If I'm not mistaken, so that just shows how well the Braves pitcher has been against a guy like Pete Alonso. But you had a chance to win. Like, and most people see 4-0, 5-0 against the Mets. It's a wrap. Turn it off. Watch something else, and then all of a sudden somebody goes, "I hope you didn't turn it off." Why? Braves had a chance to win that thing. What? And I think that now DeGrom, he's going to give you a best Max Fried. I like the fact the Braves are going, listen, you can give a shot. Your ace won't give you our ace. And I think that now. 4th game, let's see. 1st game, rain delay. 2nd game, no rain delay. 3rd game, rain delay. So there should be hopefully good conditions tonight. And hopefully the Braves go out there. Listen, I got to say it. Devon Grissom, the kid is, he's built for the moment. And that is the play of the game. They try to throw him out. Whoa. Let's challenge that. And I'm telling you, a split second, okay, you get that run. And so I do think it's about, can the Braves – it's hard because – no one jumps on DeGrom early. They got to jump on DeGrom early.
That's true.
That just doesn't happen. But be aggressive. Like you said, BJ, if they split, it's like you didn't gain the game. Can you gain the game tonight? Can you build some confidence? The Phillies look around saying, "Do we lose either way?" Why? Because it's the Mets and the Braves. We don't gain anything either way. But go out there. I was very, very impressed with the fact that most teams, they just, hey man, we lose and let's just look forward to game 4. They didn't do that. And that's the culture of the Braves, and the fact that I will say this. Some of that Marcel stuff be rubbing off on Acuna. Acuna be judging these balls wrong when they be. I said, Acuna, man, you got the time.
Well, if you notice, Marcell Ozuna hasn't been playing.
I got to say, Grossman has been incredible out there in left field. If you are Marcel, do you go, Marcel, what? Yeah, sit down.
He's still getting plenty of cheese to sit on the bench and not do anything. So, I'm sure he's not.
Kevin,
professionally, he would like to play, but
Does Marcel make the plays that Grossman made last night?
I don't think Marcell Ozuna in the field can make plays that anybody can make.
Unless they hit it right to him.
Pretty much. I mean, he has a horrible arm. He can't catch very well. I mean, it's just the truth. I don't think if it's me, I don't think Marcell Ozuna should play again the rest of the season. But that's just me.
I mean, it's a bunch of dead money in baseball.
I understand that. I get it. But hey, what does he do good?
Motivate from the dugout.
Okay, does that get you in the lineup?
Occasionally with a home run. But let me ask you guys this about DeGrom, because we'll see what the lineup is. But Ben, I know you said, hey, be aggressive. And you think about, I know DeGrom really likes, the first pitch strike, get ahead in counts and all like that. I wonder, and I don't know, I want y'all's thoughts, if maybe not being aggressive might be the key. Because I think if you're the Braves, and I'm not saying you sit there and take strike and take strike and take strike, but if it's close, I mean, I would want to try to run the pitch count up and maybe try to get into a situation where in the 5th inning, he has 80 or 90 pitches, or in the 6th inning, he has 90 or 100 pitches. Now, you can do that by, stringing a couple of hits together. I mean, it's not like sitting and watching is the only way to do that. But what would worry me about being aggressive against DeGrom is when DeGrom is at his absolute best is when he has like those 8-pitch innings. And it's like you look around and the half inning lasted 45 seconds and now he's in the 3rd inning and he's got, 14 pitches and you're in deep trouble when that happens. So I don't know. I mean, obviously if you see a pitch you like, you go for it. But I wonder if you kind of want to try to make DeGrom work tonight, or is that even possible?
No, I mean, especially coming off injury, I would. Again, you might get carved up, but I think you take a strategy with what happened last night. Your whole goal last night would be, in my opinion, get Scherzer out of the game. Make him pitch enough that he has to come out of the game. That's my strategy with DeGrom. Anytime I see a good pitcher, I'm trying to outlast them to get them out of the game. If that means driving up, and the Braves used to be really good at this back in the early Snit days. I think they've gotten a little more aggressive at the plate in recent years, but they used to be really good, and people get frustrated. Like, well, the Braves are making us use 3-4 guys a night on our pitching staff. And to me, a guy like DeGrom, make him work and earn it because coming off injury, I can't imagine they would let him pitch 100 pitches tonight. So try to get that pitch count up as much as possible. Maybe get some runners on.
But I guess if he's throwing strike after strike,
of course you got to adjust.
You got to start being.
Everybody
aggressive.
has a plan until something else happens. I mean, that's. But my strategy would be get him out of the game because you have feasted on this Mets bullpen on guys not named Edwin Diaz. Everybody else, you've had a pretty good time with it, except for him. And so I would try to get to their bullpen and take it from there. But yeah, big game tonight. Max Fried, Jacob DeGrom. It doesn't get much better. It feels like playoff baseball. Last couple nights, it felt like playoff baseball. Now, Jacob DeRizzi versus Scherzer didn't feel like a playoff matchup. But tonight, DeGrom Fried, that certainly does. We got a lot to get to from that standpoint. Corey McCartney of Battery Power and author of Tales from the Braves Dugout will join us when we come back. Also, Kylie McDaniel, ESPN's baseball insider, will join us top of hour 2. We'll talk about the Braves, some of their young prospects that have really come up and played so well. Chaz Sutton, former South Carolina and Jenkins defensive lineman, he will join us. We'll talk some South Carolina football with him. Brandon Gaudin, voice of Madden. Madden coming out tomorrow. Man, that is a game that just keeps getting bigger and bigger. It is a part, even if you don't play video games, you know players are talking about their Madden rating, and you know what that is when it pertains to that. So we'll talk to Brandon Gaudin about that. Also, Bill Bender, Sporting News, will join us, and we'll talk some college football with him after the big $7 billion, and I throw that around like it's, hey, $10, $7 billion media rights deal that the Big Ten just landed. So that means the SEC is going to get $7 billion in one because, and the SEC, it just means more, which means we get more. So I'm sure that'll be the talk. I think Greg Sankey has it in the contract, much like Nick Saban. Oh, they're getting more media money. We need $7 billion and $1. Oh, they're getting 7.2. We need 7.2 and $1. We will not be underbid by anybody in college football. We got all that to get to and more. It is 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back. 3 and Out. Braves and Mets coming up later tonight. Game number 4 of this 4-game series. It's Max Fried. It's Jacob deGrom. It doesn't get much better than that in Major League Baseball. Two guys that when they're out at their best, some of the best two in baseball. Max Fried going for his 11th win. Jacob deGrom, of course, since coming back from injury, he is 2-0 with a 1.62 ERA. That is sick. That is disgusting. That is gross. That is all of those things there for Jacob deGrom, and the Braves trying to crawl back into it here in the National League East. Our next guest, author of the book, Tales from the Atlanta Braves Dugout. You can catch his works on Battery Power on SB Nation as well. Corey McCartney joins us here on 3 and Out. Corey, welcome. How are you?
Hey, great. How's it going?
Doing fantastic. How do you classify tonight's game against the Mets? Is it must win to take 3 out of 4 to stay in this thing?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, you quantified this week as the biggest week of the year when you think about 4 against the Mets and then 3 to the Astros after this. So, I think if you're looking at this being the biggest week and you need to take 3 or 4 from the Mets and you got Jacob deGrom and Max Fried, tonight feels like, potentially the biggest game of the season to this point in the season if you're going to stay in this and have designs on trying to come back and win a 5th straight National League East title. So, yeah, tonight is absolutely huge for the Braves.
What do you expect from Max Fried tonight? I know everybody talks about Jacob deGrom, and look, I mean, a 1.62 ERA, but Max Fried 10-4. I mean, he's in the mid 2s with his ERA. What do you expect from him? And could this be a game where 2 runs wins?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously runs are going to be, at a premium when you think about, the 2 guys that you've got, pitching. I'm interested to see how long Max is able to go. We've not heard any hangups whatsoever about, things with him coming off of that concussion. He's held this Mets offense, by and large, pretty much under check. I mean, Jeff McNeil is really the only guy that's had a lot of success against him. I mean, Starling Marte's hit over 300, but, for the most part, he's really held a lot of these guys, in check. So I think it sets up, for him to kind of to match up. And, you go back to the start of the 2020 season, Max Fried in games against teams with winning records, he has the best ERA in the majors among starters, the best winning percentage among starters. So certainly this is a guy you want in this situation.
I mean, Vaughn Grissom, you talk about Michael Harris. I mean, Grossman, those guys, the new guys. I mean, talk about their impact game in the game and how pivotal have they been in this Mets series?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Michael Harris second. The guy's a front runner for, Rookie of the Year right now. I think you could argue the only guy that could probably keep him from winning NL Rookie of the Year is his own teammate, Spencer Strider. So, he's been huge in terms of, what he's meant in not only, kind of solidifying that outfield defense and being able to, play center. And then at that point, it allowed Adam Duvall to be on one side and Ronald Acuna Jr. the other. But certainly, from an offensive standpoint, he's been the most productive number 9 hitter in baseball when he's been there. Vaughn Grissom has certainly, stepped in and been a key contributor. Since Ozzie Albies went down, they've had some of the worst second base production in the majors. Albies is traveling with the team this weekend in the next week as they hit the road. So, Grissom, what he'll do going forward remains to be seen, but certainly he's been a big piece. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they're able to work him in once Albies does return, because he's been so good offensively. I think you got to find a way to keep that bat in the lineup.
Corey McCartney joining us here, and you mentioned Michael Harris gets the big deal. I mean, you're talking about 2 months basically in the major leagues, and you get a big extension. I know that's kind of becoming the way teams are trying to do things, giving guys their money before they have to. But you look at the impact. Is this a guy that we see doing things? And I hate to do this, but is this a guy that we see doing things in Atlanta that we haven't seen in center field since a guy named Andrew Jones showed up and did it?
I think that's certainly the hope. I mean, he just looks so fluid and so natural out there. I mean, it's really, you're just a foundation defense. Center field, they've had guys that productive here.
We're having a little trouble here with you, Corey. Hang on one second. We'll try to see if we can get that corrected. But yeah, Michael Harris, Alex Anthopoulos, he's done a couple things that you don't see a whole lot of teams do. Gave Ronald Acuna a deal before he needed to. Michael Harris has been in the big leagues for 2 months. About 2 months. He gets an 8-year deal. You just don't see that in baseball a lot. I know it's becoming a little bit more commonplace with your high prospects, but I mean, 2 months in the sample size of a baseball career is nothing, right? We've seen guys come up and play like Hall of Famers for 4 weeks, and then they disappear, and you go, what happened? And I think we've got Corey back here on the phone. Corey, pick up. You were in the middle talking about Michael Harris there and what Alex Anthopoulos and the Braves obviously see from him.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're hoping this can be the best combination of offense and defense they've had in center field since Andrew Jones, and certainly, if he continues at this level, the gamble from his side is that if he continues at this level, he's the guy that could be a $20 to $30 million a year kind of player at the end of this contract, and the Braves could have a monumental gamble from the Braves end if this is as good as it gets. There's certainly the end of it that you were buying at the high end for a product, but certainly. I mean, he has a chance to be really special, and I know they're really happy to have him for the next 8 years, if not 10, with those options.
Talk about the young talent on this team. I mean, you're looking around the roster. Guys are 20, guys are 21, 22, 23, and are signed to long-term deals. I mean, not only is Atlanta the World Series champion, not only are they in the playoff mix right now, but clearly they expect to be here for quite some time.
And we lost him. I don't know what happened, BJ. You put the hex on him with that question, but disappeared on us. And you look at Alex Anthopoulos did kind of address this. He said, look, he goes, I looked around at the Falcons and I see empty seats. I see people not there. But when you win, people show up and said, we started winning. We've won the division 4 years in a row. People show up. People don't realize this, but Liberty Media owns that Battery section, which is restaurant. When you're winning, people show up there and spend money. So when you're turning up, showing out, and you're having events in and around the Battery that people show up to, spend money. I mean, they were full kind of outside the park, outside the stadium when the Braves win the World Series in Houston, watching the Braves spending money in the Battery. And there's like, hey, when we're making money doing that, we can spend money to make sure that you keep coming back and having a good time. And it seems like that philosophy from Alex Anthopoulos is really setting the Braves up to be very good for a long time.
Yeah, Kevin, I mean, because Alex Anthopoulos understands that, listen, the Braves is the one thing that we all can agree with in the state of Georgia, right? That's the one thing we all can come together with. Falcons, Atlanta United, the Hawks, But when it comes to the Braves, and he knows this, look, I mean, the best product, right, is when I don't got to sell a product, right, that's out there looking the best on the, out there on the field. And we got World Series of defending World Series champs. So think about the guys that just got there. They going to them saying, hey, man, good job last year. And they just got here. So I do think that Alex Anthopoulos understands the best product. It can be sold much easier when they're actually going out there and getting it done.
Now, we've got Corey back here with us. And Corey, you've got a team tonight that almost came back and put one on the Mets last night. How do you ride that momentum going into tonight's ball game against a guy that, if you're not patient, it can be really quick innings?
Yeah, I mean, we know. Sorry about that, guys. My wife actually called me, and I hit the wrong button, so I apologize for that. As a guy who hosts a radio show, I know how troublesome radio technology can be sometimes. But yeah, I mean, obviously, Jacob deGrom is as good as it gets right now. I mean, you're talking about having faced him and Scherzer on back-to-back nights, two of the best pitchers of the last 20 years. You almost came through on a night when Scherzer pitched, and now you got to go against deGrom, who's just been a monster since he's come back off the IL. So, I mean, it's a tall task. I mean, he carved up this Braves offense last time. They used just the swing and the misses on the sliders from him this season. Guys, he's got an almost 60% swing and miss rate on that slider, the ones that he's thrown this point in the season. So you got to be patient. I mean, he's just so good. And I think this is going to be a major test for this team. This is what you worried about early in the season when you let the Mets get that lead and you couldn't get those early wins when they got healthy, when they had these two together, how good they were going to be. So, I mean, this is going to be good. It's as good as it gets from both sides in terms of pitching. So we'll see what momentum they can carry from the way they came back last night. But if you let deGrom go into this game, and if he's able to throw 90 pitches, which may be the out number for him on his fourth start, I mean, it could be a long night for the Braves.
Corey, when you look at the Braves, I mean, you're the defending World Series champions. You're in the mix for the playoffs right now. You could win the East again. And with all the young talent, guys that are 22, 23, 24 or younger, the long contracts. I mean, this is a team that is poised to be good for a really long time, in addition to being the World Series champions and being really good right now.
Without question. I mean, certainly Alex Anthopoulos and Michael Harris II were talking about this yesterday at the press conference, just this culture that they've built. And, guys want to stay there. Guys are willing to, take deals that they ultimately know are going to be below market value to stay there because they want to play there. Obviously, right now, it's put them in a fantastic spot. But I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer in any way, shape, or form. But don't forget, wasn't that long ago that we saw the Braves wrap up Freddie Freeman, Craig Kimbrell, Andrelton Simmons, Julio Teheran, on and on and on. They were signing these extensions, and only one of those guys ended up playing that whole thing out. So, everybody's got a plan, that's as the old saying goes, but certainly, they are set up on paper anyway to be a team that can not only have this core intact for a long time, but because of the values of these contracts they have, they could bring, a couple guys in at $20 million a year extra to supplement that. So I think they have a chance to be a really special team for a really long time.
Corey McCartney, Battery Power, and also author of Tales from the Atlanta Braves Dugout, our guest here on 3 and Out. Corey, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
All right, guys, appreciate it. Sorry about the issues there.
Hey, that's all right. We certainly know those things happen. We appreciate it. Corey McCartney joining us here on 3 and Out. Just absolutely huge ball game tonight. Braves and the Mets, DeGrom versus Max Fried. We're coming right back. A lot to get to. It's 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you here, 3 and Out. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Glad you're making us a part of your day. College football. It is rapidly approaching a week from Saturday. College football will be back. Our next guest, former Jenkins High defensive lineman, South Carolina Gamecock as well. Chaz Sutton joins us here on 3 and Out. Chaz, welcome to the show. How are you?
Hey, how you guys doing, man?
Hey, man, we are doing fantastic. South Carolina coming off a 7-win season last year under Shane Beamer. They get a big quarterback transfer coming in. How quickly do you think Shane Beamer can keep this thing going up and up? I mean, that was kind of a surprise for a lot of people that he went to 7 wins in year one. How much more is there in year two coming?
Well, the 7 wins is a surprise for some folks. When you have a coach that can get kids that can buy in, and then he does have talent there. I think the biggest thing, their problem last year was just, offensive line and then the quarterback play, of course, with them switching through so many guys. But I think, as long as they keep pressing forward, I think they'll have some success there. Them being able to grab a kid like Spencer Rattler, I think that was huge for the program.
And Chaz, you mentioned Spencer Rattler. I mean, a guy that was the #1 quarterback in the country. A lot of people have talked about him in the past as a Heisman candidate, a #1 overall pick. What are your expectations for him?
I would just say, I just want him to come in and be functional. I think for a long at South Carolina, we haven't had anybody that was functional like Dylan Thompson or Connor Shaw. If we can get a guy that's functional that can, move the chains and move the ball and, and we can get some big plays, here and there, I think, that'll definitely open up the offense and possibly, resurrect his college career. Because I know he was at Oklahoma, he had some trials and tribulations. He had a solid year, and then, the next year, another guy comes in and he unfortunately gets big or whatnot. So, just, for him, I think the expectations are a bit high in some people's eyes, but I wish the best for the kid. I hope he comes in and, lights it up, but, you still have to be realistic. It's his first year in this offense, and, hopefully, he's able to, pull some strings and do his best.
Chaz, I mean, you mentioned, Coach Shane Beamer saying he's the guy that got talent there, but you saw the TikTok, video. You saw the video. I don't know if you've seen the video of him walking the guys up to the stadium, kind of showing them guys be up in the nosebleeds, making sure they're coming to see y'all. Having a coach that resonates with the players, that's such a lost art sometimes, because I get it. The bottom line is winning. You got to get the X and O's, but having a guy that's helping these young guys understand, I know you got 4 and 5 stars next to your name, man, but I'm trying to make sure you understand the type of opportunity you got in front of you.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I believe that's very, very important. There was a podcast I was listening to not too long ago, and they were just talking about the difference. What was Najee Harris? He was on the podcast, the Pivot podcast, and he was just talking about the difference between Coach Saban and the difference between Coach Tomlin. And he was just saying, like, Coach Tomlin is the guy that can resonate with his players and build that relationship. Coach Saban, he's more down to business. Like, hey, let's get this done. This is how I've been doing it for however long. I've had a lot of success. Both coaches are very, very successful, but the difference is for Coach Tomlin, he wants to be involved with his players and being with Coach Beamer. Even when I was there, my 2 years brief with him, he was definitely a guy that grabbed the attention of the players, and he was definitely a player's coach. So just having a guy like that around with a lot of high energy that can, get guys moving in the right direction is always great.
Chaz Sutton joining us here on 3 and Out. And Chaz, you look at South Carolina and where they fit in that East, and it seems like Georgia obviously is at the top, but a lot of people we've talked to said, look, why can't it be South Carolina? Tennessee kind of still trying to figure out which direction they're going. Kentucky is there. Missouri, but none of these teams have really pulled away from one another outside of Georgia. Where is South Carolina right now in your mind? Could they vie for the second spot in the East, or is there maybe still a little bit more work that needs to be done?
There's always room for improvement. I see them kind of like in the middle of the pack. The biggest thing is, they just don't have to find a way to stand out and be able to compete with each team that's on that schedule. The biggest thing is, winning the East is always huge. If they can accomplish that, then everything else is, all their other goals are right out there in front of them. But the biggest thing is just trying to get out of the middle of the pack and being able to stand out, how we did many years ago. We found our identity and we rolled with it. And I think that's what these guys gonna have to do. We talk about the team going back to what we were in the past. Like we used to call ourselves the Goon Squad on defense, and the offense had their own identity. I think that those days are over with, and they just have to find a new way and a new trend and a new identity for themselves to get going and pushing in the right direction.
I know South Carolina has a lot of young talent along the defensive line. And look, you think about, Jadeveon Clowney and Melvin Ingram and yourself and Kelsey Quarles and all these great defensive linemen over the years. How much of success in the SEC, especially defensively, starts right there on the defensive line?
Well, everything starts up front. If you got some guys that can get after a quarterback and disrupt the game, it's very vital. I would definitely contest to that. You might have a guy that's your one technique or your three technique. He might not have a lot of tackles, but when you're trying to get the run game going and he's knocking off pulling guards or he's knocking off that trap guard or you got a tight end that's pulling across the formation, to kick out that end, and he can get there and he can get a lot of knockback and a lot of disruption. That's key. And then you got guys that's on the edge that's flying around, keeping the ball contained, frustrating the quarterback, in the quarterback face, that definitely impacts the game. The defensive line is very, very vital to a defense. If it all starts up front, and that's the truth. Like even when you watch the Super Bowl from this past football season, what won the game was the defensive line. Aaron Donald, guys like Von Miller, Leonard Floyd, those guys, they showed up at the end and made those plays that needed to be made.
Chad, you keep going back to your playing days. I mean, I think that's key. When you had the fact that you had star players, you had guys that starred in their role. I mean, you think about this team right now, you're gonna have some star players, correct? But how much is it about the guys who have to be a star in their role? Because everybody's not gonna be. Yeah, you a big time player because you at South Carolina, but sometimes you got to be willing to do the dirty work. Come in, not play as many snaps. How much does it just come down to, like you said, that identity, but knowing that, man, maybe what I thought my career was gonna be becomes something different, and it's just me embracing that to become the best player I can with the opportunities I'm given.
Well, I just look at it like this, when it comes to, being a part of that team, or any teams, everybody has their role, even if it goes all the way down to your scout players. And then also, you got your guys that's on, you got your special teamers. We had a lot of guys like, we had this guy by the name of Brandon Davis. Like nobody would never win a rep down the field on kickoff because he was the first one down there every time. So, you had guys like that, really, really stood out. And then you had some guys that, that played on defense. They wasn't the standout guy, but they did their job consistently. And they, they was always in the right spot, to be that eraser if somebody else, made a mistake. So you gonna always have those guys that fill in that void or whatever the case may be. So I think, that's very, very important for whatever team.
Dante Robinson, Stephon Gilmore, Alshon Jeffrey, Kalimba Edwards. Y'all had a bunch of guys come through there. Every time I talk to a guy that played in South Carolina, you guys always say, man, it's just different here, man. And I know everybody say that. But what makes it so different going to South Carolina? You guys play up to the standard. I'm not saying you got to be somebody different, but you guys talk about the difference in playing in South Carolina. What does playing in South Carolina mean to Chad Sutton?
Well, when I first got there, South Carolina was a team that's overlooked. Even with Coach Spurrier being there, it's like, all right, we have Coach Spurrier now. Okay, well, what direction are we going in? And then, like Coach Spurrier started bringing in guys like, like Alshon, Stephon, the Melvin Ingrams of the world, the Jadeveon Clowneys, and all these different guys. And, we just kind of put it together. But the main thing, just from a defensive standpoint, we just had this identity that, hey, we're not going to be blocked. We're going to win every rep. We're going to showcase our talents, and we're going to go out there on the field in between those white lines, and we're going to put on the show. That was us. We didn't accept nothing less. And even at practice, you got to a point where it got very, very competitive at practice. And there were days where offense and defense would get into big brawls because of the competitive nature of it. And that was the identity that we wanted. We wanted that, because we had a goal in mind. We wanted to go undefeated. We wanted to possibly, be able to win the SEC championship and possibly be able to play for a national championship. So those were the moments that we collectively, just wanted to put together.
Chaz Sutton joining us here on 3 and Out. Chaz, really appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you guys. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Chaz Sutton joining us here on 3 and Out, former South Carolina Gamecock defensive lineman, Jenkins defensive lineman, and those Gamecocks 7 wins last year. They open up with Georgia State, and their first 3 games could be pretty interesting. Georgia State picked up near the top of the Sun Belt East. They go to Arkansas and Georgia first 3 weeks. So that is tough sledding there for South Carolina. And BJ, as we said, I don't think people appreciate how good Shane Beamer was last year. They were plus 90 in the rankings in every offensive category. They were plus 90 in rushing, points per game. They were bad. Won 7 games despite all that.
Had a ton of injuries. Obviously had to go with a grad assistant quarterback at the beginning of the year. Found a way to rally. I think South Carolina is going to be a lot better than people think. Watch out for the Gamecocks in the SEC East.
I think if Spencer Rattler can do something that Chad said and just buy into it, we don't need you to be, I understand you was number one, if not number one recruit coming out. BJ, as you mentioned, on the Heisman Trophy list and all these different things. What can you be for South Carolina? Because I think what happens is there aren't going to be too many better resume boosters for a quarterback to play at Oklahoma. But if you leave Oklahoma and you go to a team in the SEC, how does that boost your resume? Because people are going to be looking at the type of player he is and the type of teammate he is, and right, wrong, indifferent. People are going to assume the negative until he shows the positive. But I remember a time, and I'm not saying it is, but I remember a time when South Carolina went to Georgia with a guy that played receiver and had to play quarterback. And I know it was a rainy day and it was muggy and they ended up winning it. If Spencer Rattler can do the unthinkable, what would that do not just for South Carolina, but for his draft status? We will see.
We've got more to come here on 3 and Out on this Thursday, all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. We're streaming live at ESPNCoastal.com and on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Good to have you back. I still laugh every time I hear that rejoiner because I literally told my son, I said, say what you want. He's like, the son of Kevin. I was like, well, you don't have to say
That's
that.
right.
I mean,
yeah.
I mean, he already let you know he let you know what type of legacy he's carrying on. He let you know right. As you know, he tell people that at school. Do you know who I am? I would love that.
I don't know if he does tell people that at school.
Well, he ain't gonna tell you that he tell them, but he said.
I know he sits out in the hall a lot.
No. Hey,
I'm just messing.
At the end of the day, somebody questioned his Braves take, and he said, "Do you know who my dad is?" Yeah, and my Braves take is right. And I like to come up and say, "Oh my God, do you still like Mike Fulton Davis?" You go, "No."
No, it's funny. Anyway,
They had a good run with their show.
yeah, he and my other son, I would never put this on the air, but they used to come up here and do a show called Bro Talk.
It was nice.
They would sit in there.
I see them recording it out.
Yeah,
They
they would
got
go-
straight takes coming from out there.
I know. Listen, it got shut down because the little one told the older one, "You just mad because I'm better than you," and that's it. I was here when he did it, and then all of a sudden it went from bro talk.
You know what happens when egos get in the way.
But then he wasn't there by himself, and he would. When we come back, he'll come back and put his headphones on.
He was running the board.
Yeah.
And
He was
everything.
doing it.
We'll come back. We'll take 3. Actually, Kylie McDaniel next. 3 it out. Good to have you back. Hour 2. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. A lot to get to as the Braves and Mets wrap up a 4-game series here this weekend. Our next guest, ESPN Baseball Insider, just put out his top list of prospects as we head into the home stretch of the 2022 season. Kiley McDaniel joins us here on 3 and Out. Kiley, welcome to the show. How are you?
Good. Thanks for having me.
Appreciate you coming on. And certainly the prospects, especially in Atlanta, that we've seen come through have been contributing at an extremely high level. Coming off of the last CBA where we were trying to get through service time manipulation and all that, have we seen just around baseball a more of a willingness to just call guys up when they're ready to come up?
Yeah, I think we have. I think the teams that are sort of process oriented, going back to like Jeff Luhnow and Houston, and this continued with Baltimore and Mike Elias. The teams that are sort of doing a complete heavy rebuild and don't have the biggest payroll upside, those teams will continue to do what they've been doing and hold a guy down at the beginning of the season for a week or two to get an extra year of control, because that's sort of the game they think they're playing, whether that's accurate or not. But the teams that are a little more aggressive, like San Diego or the Mets, or whether it's traditional big market, whatever the sort of differences are, those teams we've seen going for it. And I think now with the new CBA rules about Rookie of the Year and WAR in a certain season and things like that, the incentives are now there for Baltimore. If they don't call up the number 2 prospect on my list, Gunnar Henderson, if they don't call him up this year, to call him up as soon as possible next year, as opposed to holding him down for those 2 weeks or maybe 2 months to get the Super 2 eligibility. But yeah, it is a much smaller factor now than it was a couple years ago.
Kiley, with the Braves, you've had so many young players come up and just really star right away. How impressed have you been with the young talent for the Atlanta Braves?
Not only that, but also they've come up from AA or not necessarily spending an entire season at AAA. Like we've seen Christian Pache and Drew Waters and some of those kinds of guys where you kind of wonder, oh, they've been in the minors long enough or too long, or they should be ready. Like, what are we waiting on? And they come up and they're not quite ready. And then we see Vaughn Grissom. He was in AA for like a month. And Michael Harris I don't think he even played in AAA. That's even tougher to pull off. Like, I don't think that should be an expectation going forward, that these guys are just going to come up and hit the ground running immediately. But I also think those are 2 guys that the organization really believed in and thought could do this. Whereas, a guy that was trailed like Shea Langoliers or Pache, I think maybe there's probably a little less belief that they would be able to be that kind of guy. And you tend to evaluate your prospects better than anyone else. And I would also throw Spencer Strider into that group as well. I thought if he came up this year, it would be as like a 1, 2, 3 inning at a time, like spot starter, bridge to the end of the bullpen, like that kind of guy. And he's obviously is much better than that already. So there's been an identification of who in the system can do this, a scouting ability to find the guys that have the potential to do it, and then at the big league level, putting them in a position to succeed and making the most of them, which has been really impressive, even if it's only been 3-4 guys. But that's 3 or 4 more than a lot of teams pull off.
And Kiley, even sticking with those guys, I mean, how much are they benefiting, the other 29 teams in baseball? Because obviously they represent incredible talent, but we 2 or 3 years removed from Austin Riley being asked, can he even be the everyday third baseman? He just signed a $212 million deal. Michael Harris, I mean, outside of Sam Meows and all his freaking press conferences, this dude been here 2 months. Are they really helping the rest of the bigs? Because like you're saying, most of the time they get called up, they get called back down if they're not ready. These guys get called up, not just stay up, but they be cemented into these lineups.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Austin Riley until last season had been, a little bit up and down, some concerns. Like, I was working for the Braves at that time, and it was, I think he can play third. I think he'll make enough contact. Like, we like the mental makeup. We think he can figure it out. Kyle Wright was up and down a bit. There's some other guys like Tucker Davidson, who's since been traded, Kyle Muller, Tuki Toussaint. Some of those guys were up and down. Bryce Wilson couldn't quite figure it out. Kyle Wright made the breakthrough this year. Max Fried was a little bit up and down, that he made the breakthrough. So I think it's a combination of having a lot of young talent. You have more opportunities to find the guy that will break through. But it also seems like the front office, the upper minors development, the big league development, putting them in position to succeed, telling them, your pitches work here. This is the kind of pitch you need to be able to make an adjustment on. Like all those little things that don't seem to be a big part of a player succeeding. It seems like, Acuna was going to be Acuna. What part does like the big league hitting coach have in that? And these kinds of cases where it just immediately hit the ground running, it is those guys, because that doesn't happen that often.
Kiley McDaniel joining us here, ESPN Baseball Insider. And you talk about the guys that the Braves have called up. A lot of people have said, the Braves farm system kind of been decimated because they pulled those guys up. But seemingly the guys they brought up this year, they've all kind of worked out. Where do you see the Braves? I know you just put out the prospects list for the remainder of the season here. where do you see the Braves and their talent below the major league level, even though the guys they've called up this year have seemingly performed at a high level?
Yeah, I put out a farm ranking update like 2 weeks ago. I think I had them 29th on that one, and I still have them 29th, although the team below them has changed. It's now the Padres, who traded their entire farm system, so they're now 30th. But the thing that I said in that farm ranking update is there are some teams that are 29th because they don't draft and develop well, and then they trade guys to prop up their big league team, and they're just essentially not being effective. There's not a high level everyday, mid rotation, late inning relievers. Like, those guys aren't coming through. They're just adding a little bit at a time and trading a little bit at a time and staying at a low level. And, like Washington's one of those teams where they'll run through Strasburg and Harper and Soto and those guys, but those guys fly through the system. They don't stay long enough to prop it up. Whereas, obviously, in the Braves' instance, like running through Vaughn Grissom, who's still eligible right now, they would be in 30th if he loses his eligibility, which will probably be soon at this rate. But running through Harris and Strider and then having guys like Riley and Kyle Wright that have sort of come through the system recently, that's the way you want to be in the bottom five, which is all the guys that are good have already gotten to the big league team and have 6 to 7 years of control and are doing it right now. We're picking late in the first round. We're trading some guys here and there to prop up the big league team over the last couple of seasons. And the guys that are really good don't stay there very long. Like, if you're going to be in the bottom 5, bottom 10 in a farm system, you want it to look like that. But that also means, there's not that many teams, I guess, like the Dodgers, maybe the Rays would be an example, where you're constantly competing, but also constantly running a top 5 to top 10 farm system. It is very difficult to pull off. And right now, you'd rather have the young core, the good big league team, than the good farm system. The good farm system is just a thing you write in an article. It's kind of useless on its own. So this is obviously the thing you'd rather have. And I think the real test will be in the coming years, can they prop up that farm system into the top half so that they have the ammunition to make another one of these Matt Olson trades if they want to? Right now, they don't really have it without dipping into the big league team.
I was going to say, right now you have Atlanta as the defending World Series champion. They are leading the wild card in the National League, could win the East. We'll see, maybe not, but they're in the mix for the playoffs. And the core of their roster is either very young and or signed for a very long time. Even with maybe some limitations in the farm system, does it look like to you this is a team that is set up for success for years to come, even still?
Yeah, I actually have, don't want to ruin the article I have coming up, but I'm thinking it may be time to do like a ranking of the various cores in baseball, however you want to describe that or define it, which I think would be the first challenge. But you could argue, especially if you're defining core as, say 3 years of control of a player that is currently on the big league roster, I would think they'd be right there with some, the best teams in baseball, like, the Dodgers and the Padres and those kinds of teams. Although I guess the Padres, most of their good players are on shorter term deals. They would certainly be in that argument, and they don't have the biggest payroll. And again, they haven't been picking in the top 10. They haven't been blowing it out in the international game. Like, they've been sort of bootstrapping it, getting 3rd and 4th rounders, guys that are, not top 10 prospects in all of baseball, turning them into players like Wright and Riley, as we talked about. I would say they're probably in the top 5 of that. They might even be higher than that.
When you mentioned earlier, when you talk about teams that's closer down to the bottom, when you talk about how they develop players. When you think about guys, we keep talking about the Braves, young players. Well, I know it's all about production, but you got to have patience with them. At what point do you realize, you talk about a guy like Austin Riley, he was able to make those adjustments. When do you know you've seen enough to send him back down? And what makes you say, okay, while he's struggling, I still rather have him on my everyday roster than let him work through the Kings?
That's the problem. I've been doing interviews and writing articles about this exact thing right now, because Toronto's in a weird spot where they have their catcher, their everyday catcher, Danny Jansen, and then their backup catcher is Alejandro Kirk, who's operating as their everyday DH. Their best prospect and one of the top 10 prospects in baseball is Gabriel Moreno, a catcher that's in AAA right now, because in the big leagues, he's the backup catcher, backup DH, backup everywhere. And it's like, this guy needs to play every day to continue getting better and eventually be ready when you're ready to give him a full-time spot. He actually needs something similar to what they do in soccer, a loan, where you'd let him go play for a last place team for the rest of the year, get to where when the spot is open for him or when he's been proved enough that he is worthy of taking the spot from someone, that he can improve. But with a really good team, we saw this with the Padres with C.J. Abrams, another kid from Atlanta, where he's a little too good for AAA. He needs to be challenged. You need to challenge him every day in the big leagues, but he's probably not going to be as good as you need him to be in those next couple of months while he's working out the kinks. And so a contending team doesn't know what to do with that guy. That's part of the reason he ended up in that Juan Soto deal. So that's actually a real problem for contending teams when they have a guy that has a longer break-in period in the big leagues. At least with pitchers, like you've seen this with Milwaukee, they'll take a guy like Corbin Burns or Brandon Woodruff and break them into the bullpen 1 or 2 innings at a time, let them get loose a little bit, and then 1 year they'll be like, all right, now we're going to go 5-6 innings at a time in the rotation. With pitchers, there's a path to doing that, to take what they're good at, let them do it in small bits, and then stretch them out into longer runs. with hitters, it's like they can't really get good as like a part-time DH pinch hitter, that kind of thing. You have to either let them play all the time or put them in AAA. You can't really have a young player do that. And so that's why taking a guy that is pretty good but maybe needs to go to AAA and turning him into a like bona fide big leaguer, I mean, that is a 9-figure value of talent to have on your team. And also, obviously through Austin Riley's contract, like it creates that level of value for the player as well. And it's just extremely high stakes and usually a compressed amount of time.
Kylie McDaniel joining us here at ESPN Baseball Insider. Kylie, the Braves and Mets finish up a series tonight. When you look around baseball, obviously, Yankees, Red Sox, people talk about it. Dodgers, Giants, people talk about it. Where would you put this Braves-Mets kind of rivalry at the moment, and where do you think it could go given what Alex Anthopoulos has put in place and obviously with the type of money Steve Cohen is willing to spend on the Mets roster?
Yeah, I kind of wonder if it might, maybe not in terms of like national audience and, TV audience. I don't think it'll necessarily catch Red Sox Yankees, but in terms of like two teams that are battling for playoff spots and every year are, right next to each other competitively, I think they may have passed them at this point, because what the Red Sox are doing and what they're trying to do long term is build that sort of sustainable winner the way the Dodgers have, with another former Rays executive as the Red Sox chief baseball operations guy. Chaim Bloom is also a former Rays guy. They're trying to copy that blueprint, but that also usually means a couple years of pain as you try to build up all that depth and try to not get yourselves into bad contracts, which is not really what Red Sox fans are looking for. They would like to have pleasure right now and no pain at all. And I think navigating that will be tough. So yeah, in terms of, like TV ratings and how often they're on Sunday Night Baseball, I don't know if they quite passed them yet, but in terms of like how good they are right now, I think that might be, along with like Padres Dodgers, like one of the most competitive rivalries in baseball.
Kylie McDaniel, ESPN Baseball Insider, our guest here on 3 and Out. Kylie, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Kylie McDaniel joining us here on 3 and Out. Braves and Mets finish up their 4-gamer tonight. And I think, again, go back to the days of Chipper Jones when Chipper was in the heads of the Mets fans. You kind of get that back and forth. Now, especially in the age of social media, Braves and Mets fans go back and forth at each other all the time. I think it's turned into a really good back and forth rivalry.
It's a great rivalry. And just think about the significance of the recent series and the atmospheres, right? I mean, up in New York, you didn't like that the Mets handled the series the way they did, but it was a great atmosphere, electric, playoff type feel. That's what you've had at Truist. And it's felt like playoff baseball. Two teams that are really good. And Kevin, to your point, two teams that are probably going to be good for quite some time.
We've got more to come. Here it is, 3 and Out, Take 3, coming up next on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Good to have you back. Here it is, 3 and Out on this Thursday. Thanks for making us a part of your day. We'll hear from Brandon Gaudin, voice of Madden. That drops coming up tomorrow. College football coming back in about a year. Thanks, Ben. Appreciate that.
Does Madden come out at midnight? Did you ever do like the midnight releases when you no?
Well,
Okay.
anymore now because I'm old. If I
I'm not saying now.
No, I'm
I'm
saying-
saying now.
Whoa,
I'm saying, but now if it's
You
on,
ain't old.
here's what
You
you do.
seasoned.
So here's the trick though. When you
Wise.
do it, you get when you buy if you really know it's the game you want, you get the pre-download. And if you can't get it till midnight, then you just leave the
Wait,
Xbox or
wait.
PlayStation on. You go to bed and you wake up, it's in it.
I don't
What-
even know
what-
what you're talking
Hold on.
about.
What
You download the game. You don't go to store anymore.
Oh,
Yeah.
Like you go get
don't
you
have to-
download. Yes, it just downloads on your console.
That falls into your loser category. That kind of stuff you put to say, well, you're a loser. You're sitting on that. And
So you can't go to the store and buy a disc?
No, I mean you
No,
can, but you know
Don't
why
you
would
know
you
why?
want to?
Okay, once again, BJ just happened to be driving. The couple of times out the year you drive, and I'm standing in line, and you go, dude, like, what are you doing? I'm about to get this Madden. Really?
Oh, we're all going at midnight.
I'm not. I'll just go on my console and go dink, and then I'll say see you
This is
later.
the same Kevin that when baseball was kind of like
All
parked
right,
out.
hold
Kev
on.
was
So that
waiting
means,
up.
I just want to understand. So at 11 o'clock at night, you can start the
Actually, I
download.
think you can go ahead and download the game. You
And
just
then-
can't play it till
But
midnight.
at
And
12:01,
if
right
the
there.
game gets activated, you're good.
All right. So we're all going to Kevin's house.
No, you're not.
I mean, when last time you been to Kevin? Have you took a bath in Kevin? Bath in Kevin's you know,
That was literally the worst.
Ah.
Let's take 3 on that note. I don't even know how to transition out of that, so we just go to take 3. All right, take 1, fellas. Big Ten just announced a 7-year, $7 billion. I feel like it should be like Dr. Evil. $7 billion with a B for media rights with NBC, Fox. They're going to do some streaming and some other stuff. Obviously, the SEC is going to get more than that. I think that's fair. So if 2 conferences are handing out what they project, and I say they because the Big Ten is saying this themselves, $80 to $100 million per school. And you look at the Big 12, ACC, Pac-12, who are looking at maybe mid-20s. On a good year, 30s. How does everyone else compete with that?
Well, I think there are a lot of questions. There are a lot of questions, period. You know, when you talk about P5, G5, all that, the playoff, whatever, college football, the NCAA. But in terms of that directly, I mean, I don't know that conference realignment or conference realignment efforts are done. I mean, we've seen all the rumors, right? I mean, could the Big Ten want more West Coast teams? I mean, do they go after Oregon or Washington? I mean, could the SEC or the Big Ten
In which
say,
case, the money goes up even more.
yeah, I mean, could the Big Ten or the SEC say we want Clemson and FSU and Miami and North Carolina? I mean, Georgia Tech. I don't know. I mean, I think there are some uncertainties now in terms of if you want to look at the ACC, for example. Here, I think if the ACC wanted to increase that revenue, I mean, a real way to do it, and I don't know if this is even possible, but I mean, Ben, you've mentioned this before. Notre Dame is in the ACC in every other sport, and they have a kind of a semi-contract where they play like 4 or 5 or whatever it is ACC football teams every year. Do I think that's going to happen? No. Would I predict it to happen? No. But if the ACC at some point in the next, I don't know, maybe the college football playoff changes where there's more of a direct pathway through conferences, and maybe the ACC can say, all right, Notre Dame, it makes sense for y'all to come over. Maybe that changes.
But that doesn't really solve the problem. I'm just looking at it and saying, if you're looking at a model, which potentially, if the ACC has a long-term media rights deal, so that's not going to change, where the SEC and the Big Ten if you just look at the numbers, over a 4-year span, which in the world of planning in that long, over a 4-year span, could make $200 million more dollars per school. How do you compete with that?
No, I understand.
If you're
I
Florida
agree.
State and
I
Vanderbilt
agree.
is making $200 million more than you, what do you do?
I would
how do you
imagine? I would have to imagine. I don't know how this works legally. I would have to imagine there's going to be efforts to kind of renegotiate this long-term contract. And if you get Notre Dame, I would assume that would be a big reason to do so, right? Like if the ACC has Notre Dame, I don't think that's going to happen.
Mhm.
But Notre Dame is kind of sort of in the ACC.
Mhm.
If you get Notre Dame, I think you restart that entire negotiation. And maybe you try to anyway. But to your point, it's a great question. I don't know. I think there are a lot of unknowns.
I think it's going to be really, really bad. It's something that we always talked about. If your phone wasn't ringing when all this conference realignment was going on, you got the hope that you're in the future plans. The only phone that rang that actually got called was Notre Dame. Oregon and Washington, they're calling the Big Ten saying, sorry. So I do think that when you look at the type of money that's going on, perception is everything. We start talking about teams like we have anything to do with it. Well, we get $100 million. What do you mean we? Or I root for this team in the Big Ten, or I'm going to root for this team in the SEC. If you're an ACC team, they're going to start saying, well, wait a minute. How can we compete? Now they're going to blame everything on not getting the money. Recruiter, they're going to blame it.
Well, I mean, if I have $70 million more than you every single year, Ben, I think I can do better. I mean, I think I'm going to do better than you just because I can.
And let's call it what it is. As much as we want to make it about the final result, the national championship, it's not. 4 or 5 teams can win it every year, right? Who's still the biggest brand? Notre Dame. Notre Dame is still the biggest brand, and they're not going to win the Natty. And everybody wants Notre Dame. Everybody wants Notre Dame, including the ACC, which they're already in. Freaking ACC, they just don't. They obviously they just got the 5-game. With the conference. But I will say this, BJ. You're trying to get meetings with Greg Sankey as much as possible, because if the Big Ten, they said they're gonna probably add, I don't know, maybe 2, 3, 4 more teams. That means that the SEC is gonna say, okay, we're gonna add 4, but who's that 4 gonna be?
Well, I mean, but again, I will say neither one of you kind of addressed how you solve it as it sits, because everything says, well, the SEC will just go get more teams. Well, that's still not helping the teams left behind. I just think that's going to be, there's going to be a huge chasm if there is no further expansion in about 4 years, where you look at, I mean, you talk about now where people look at, FCS schools and say, hey, how do they financially do it? Or you look at lower level, even G5 schools, and you say, hey, we need to play the Alabamas just to help finance our athletic department. And they're making $100 million. Like, they're going to have, athletic centers that are like the inside of hey, this is the athletic building, and this is inside that athletic building for even more select group of people. And we spent $15 million on that, like just on frivolous crap. And and you're not going to be able to do that when you're talking about luring recruits in terms of keeping up. I think that's going to cause a huge chasm in the haves and still haves, but don't have as much. How about that? Take 2, fellas. Braves have been handing out contracts. They've been locking guys up. 2 most talked about guys now are Dansby Swanson and Max Fried. Want to get him on a long-term deal. You can have one. Who you take? Obviously, Vaughn Grissom is there. You guys, but you can have one to get to an extension. If you only have one, Dansby or Fried?
I think it's Max Fried. I still think you win with starting pitching over the long haul. And I understand that starting pitching, with injuries and just guys having up and down seasons might be a little more volatile, but in some ways that makes it more valuable because there is such unpredictability in starting pitching. When you have someone that's a true ace, that is almost invaluable. And what was it Kylie McDaniel said, or Corey McCartney said, against like elite competition, some sort of stat that said Max Fried was the best pitcher in baseball over the last couple of years. I think you've got to get him. And I don't think it's going to be an easy thing to do. I think there are going to be a lot of teams that look at Max Fried and Dansby Swanson and say, look, we are players here. But I think you've got to get Max Fried. I mean, you look at your position players, right? You feel like your core is not only really, really good, but you feel like that group's going to be in place for a long time. You look at your starting rotation, Kevin. I mean, what do we know about Mike Soroka? Correct me if I'm wrong. Charlie Morton is a free agent at the end of the year. Mm-hmm. Kyle Wright at some point is probably going to want to get paid. Ian Anderson, who was a big part of last season's World Series team, is currently in AAA.
Now might be a good time to sign him.
Well,
if you want to do an extension, now might be a good time.
Jake Odorizzi has been terrible with the Braves. And granted, small sample size, but you have Spencer Strider. But I think if you were to try to count out 1 through 5, the future of the starting rotation for Atlanta, it's pretty hard to do. I think you need Max Fried. And look, Dansby's great offensively, defensively, Atlanta guy. But if you can get both, that would be wonderful. But if I'm going after one, it's Max Fried.
It's Max Fried for this reason alone. Braves are a team that matter, and you got Max Fried for what he brings you, and not just in the regular season, but in the postseason. You're going to need him in the postseason. Now, if the Braves were, the Braves of old, like kind of like irrelevant, well, you use him as a tradable piece. Because I think what it is the guy about Dansby is playing out of his mind. He's a part of the greatest Braves infield you've ever seen. But baseball is about getting younger and getting cheaper. Well, Grissom right now is still on a rookie deal. We don't know how long he's going to be on that if he continues. I mean, I know he's talking to Michael Harris every day. Like, man, how did you do that? You just keep on balling, man. They'll call you to the front office. But I just think that starting pitching is everything in baseball. But when you got a guy like Max Fried, because this is the thing. I know we were talking about Julio Teheran. How many times when he's the open day starter? 6, 7 years in a row? Mike Soroka, and obviously he's going, he's coming, he's making his way back. We don't even talk about Mike Folnavich. This guy wasn't how he became what he became in such a short amount of time. I mean, we're a couple of years removed, Kevin, from him and Ian Anderson. They starting, they're your starters in the postseason in the COVID. Yeah, he's earned it. It's gonna cost a lot of money, BJ, as you mentioned. But I'm sorry, Alexandropoulos knows this, because even if it wasn't his fault, because of the debacle that happened with Freddie Freeman, you got to re-sign Max. Everybody gonna be saying, love you. Listen, love you, Dansby, love you.
Can I ask this about Dansby?
I think that might actually help Alex Anthopoulos, the debacle that happened with Freddie Freeman.
Can I ask you this? I mean, and I know this is really early, but what we see from Vaughn Grissom, does that kind of change the thinking at all with Dansby, or is it still
Dansby's one of the best
for
defensive shortstops in the league. I don't care what anybody says. Like, I would try to get Dansby back if you could. Now, if you're saying I can only have one, yeah, it's Max Fried. Why? Because I have a little fallback where I have Vaughn Grissom who can play shortstop. Is he going to play it as good as Dansby? I doubt it, but obviously he's shown some signs of being really, really good. To Ben's point, I think the Freddie Freeman situation probably helps Alex Anthopoulos in a lot of these. Like, you want to be here, you better get a deal done. If this is where you want to be, you like the culture, you like the clubhouse, you like the guys you're playing with, we're set up to be good for a long, long time. Don't wait till the last minute. Have your agent go, what offer? Then you're left out in the cold. All right, we got to get to this quickly. And we got Brandon Gaudin waiting on the other side, voice of Madden. Take 3, of course, we heard Clark Lee at SEC Media Day say we're going to be the best program in the country. So that being said, look into your crystal ball. When will Vanderbilt win an SEC game?
That was quite the introduction to that.
Well, I had to do it because I want to set it up. Because if I just said, hey, when will Vanderbilt win an SEC game, wouldn't have to think. But you're on a quest, so you say to make Vanderbilt the best in the country.
I think
it's been 2 years and you haven't won one.
Don't ask me which one, but
I'm asking you. I'm asking you. Yes, I literally just did.
You said when?
Did I not just say when will they win an SEC game? Well, obviously, if it's this year, I want a date.
No, is the answer to win not this season?
Win this season. Who are they going to beat?
I don't have their schedule in front of me.
Well, look it up while Ben tells me what he thinks.
I'm gonna say they get one this season.
Yeah.
Who? Who are they going to beat in the East? You know that's who they play. Who are they beating in the East? Ole Miss is a crossover, guaranteed. Who are they beating?
I know who they better not beat, but I will say this.
Maybe they beat Missouri.
I'm about to say Missouri could be, because we don't really know. Like Missouri, they're gonna be they're gonna be an up and down team this year. I think if for Clark Lee's sake, he's gonna have to beat somebody, because once again, there are certain statements. Ain't nobody asked you that, man. Like, ain't nobody asked you to come out here and say, listen, this is the SEC. Media days for football, not baseball.
So BJ says this year, Ben says Missouri, maybe. We'll come back. Brandon Gaudin, the voice of Madden, will join us next. It's 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. back. It is 3 and Out. Kevin, BJ, and Ben. Thanks for making us a part of your day. And tomorrow, the new Madden comes out. Always a big day for a lot of gamers out there. And joining us here, the voice of Madden, Brandon Gaudin, joins us here on 3 and Out. Brandon, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing good. I feel like this is our yearly tradition, and always good to be back with you guys.
And it's an ever-changing thing, right? I mean, as video game technology progresses, they always want to add new stuff and put more things in the game. Are you continually amazed from the moment they ask you to do it? It's like, okay, I'm just going to be the voice of the announcer, to how much stuff they're having you update, to how much newer things they're adding each and every year.
Yeah, this is the 7th year now that Charles Davis and I have done this together. And I really knew very little about the video game space when I stepped into this role, other than the fact that I had played video games as a kid, and Madden was my favorite game. I think it was every kid's favorite game, kind of through the 90s as it started to surge. And what I've learned is that it's a heck of a lot more complex than I realized. There's 250 people that work year-round down in the Orlando studio to put Madden together every year. And, Madden's been around so long that I think what naturally happens, especially with the explosion of social media, is you get that vocal minority who get on social media angry that the game is the same every year. And I think that there are some valid points to that, but I think just by and large, the mass population doesn't really realize or appreciate what all goes into this. And I don't mean commentary. My part, Charles's part, that's easy. But especially through the pandemic and everyone working from home, them trying to push that video game out over the last couple of years, just like most people in most industries, was a real challenge. So they feel like this year they've got a much better product than they did last year. Last year was a miss. And I think they feel like next year they've got some more things in the hopper as well. So hopefully it's in a good space. But to answer your question, there's a whole heck of a lot more that goes into it than I ever realized.
Brandon, the late John Madden, who passed away tragically at the end of last year, is on the cover. Talk about John Madden's legacy, and obviously this is part of it.
Yeah, I mean, once he passed, you figured in the discussion around the Madden studio was to put him on the cover. That was just the obvious choice. It was the right choice. I mean, he's changed a couple of things. He kind of changed how games were broadcasted and how the telestrator was used in a real life NFL broadcast. And he changed the video gaming world. Now, some people might say, well, it was just his name on the game, but he was active in it. They would fly out. He lived in the Bay Area still. And the Madden team, the executives would fly out there to see him every summer, and he would watch them play the game and tell them the things he liked and didn't like. He wanted it to feel like a real football game. And so he was involved, not on a day-to-day basis, but he had a lot of say in what ultimately went into that game and what got cut and what he liked and didn't like. So putting him on the cover was a no-brainer. One of the cool features this year is that they are having something called the Madden Legacy game. So when you boot up your system tomorrow or whenever you get the game and start playing the game, you can play a game where Charles and I basically, on the commentary front, take you through the life of John Madden. Throughout the game, we're telling stories about him when he grew up, when he became a player, when he became a coach, when he retired, when he became a broadcaster. And on one sideline is the veteran Coach Madden, and you can see that he looks older. On the other sideline is a younger Coach Madden, and he's coaching some of his favorite players throughout the time that he was in the game. So you'll see when you're able to play it and do. A lot of people were wondering what it would turn out to be. It turned out to be really cool, and it's a great tribute to John Madden. That is my favorite feature in this year's game.
And Brandon, you touched on it a little bit earlier when you talk about the legacy of John Madden. When I think of Madden, when I think of him, when I think of the game, I think of staying power, especially in the world today, to where these Madden ratings, everybody care about the ratings. You got to update those seemingly every week, but the anticipation. I mean, most people have never met John Madden. I am blessed to have met him before, and I don't know how long I stood in front of him before I actually, introduced myself. But to know that with the ever-changing world of gaming technology, it is still the most anticipated game out there. I mean, could you just talk about being a part of that and just the fact that people anticipate this thing? They're already anticipating future years, and you haven't even released a new version yet.
Yeah, it's crazy. I think what strikes me is that every year this game sells around 6 or 7 million copies like clockwork. And now some people will say, well, that's because EA's the only one with the NFL franchise to make the game. Part of that's true, but if people really didn't like the game or didn't like the franchise, then that number wouldn't be 6 or 7 million. It would probably be more like 3 or 4 million. So in other words, there is still a big desire for this game, and I think it's headed in the right direction after we talked about a couple of years that were really tough during the pandemic, where they didn't push out a game that they ultimately thought was their best work. But John Madden and his presence, like his name is going to be iconic forever. It just is. And a big reason was what he did on the field and as a coach and in the booth, yes, but I really think probably the biggest tribute to his legacy now has become this game and the incredible popularity that it's had over the years and continues to have. The Madden ratings that you brought up are interesting because that is probably, when I'm on the road doing games, that is the number one thing that is discussed with me by fans and other players. They get very fired up about that. And for us in the media, what it makes for is fun conversation. Like, yeah, some players legitimately get upset at their speed and overall rating. That's fine. But really, it fosters fun discussion around around the poker table, around the bar, around while you're watching a game. Like, people are talking about this now for the last couple of years, and it seems to be increasingly so. So I'm sure for EA, I haven't talked to them about this, but they're sending these Madden adjuster ratings out into the field now because they've realized people care about this. It's good publicity, and they want to get it right. I mean, I think that they genuinely want to make sure that these ratings are reflecting what is on the field on Sundays. So, it's kind of this thing that's taken off in the last couple of years, and I don't see it stopping anytime soon.
Brandon, I mean, right, wrong, and different, you and Charles, I mean, whether you guys, know it or not, you have become the new validator when it comes to football players because everybody's not going to make a Pro Bowl. Everybody's not going to make a Super Bowl. Everybody's not going to make an all-pro team. But Madden ratings are forever. Guys will go back. And obviously, you guys have nothing to do with it, but you guys are the people they know. Oh, there go Brandon, there go Charles. When they come up to you trying to eat, they ask for an autograph before they walk off. They saying, hey, man, you really think I'm an 84? No, I didn't give you the 84 rating. Talk about the fact that the ego and pride that every football player plays with looks and says, I guarantee you they do this. Contract negotiations, people are saying, how in the world y'all not going to give me the money? I'm a 98 on Madden, dude. That kind of stuff is real, and I would love to say it doesn't matter, but it does.
Yeah, it does. And that's what's crazy is that I think now that EA is kind of driving a perception of how good these players are. And I do think for a player now, there's actually value in having a higher rating when it comes time to negotiation, because what is it? It's all PR. So the bigger the number, the more it's out there on social media, the perception kind of equals reality. It just becomes, oh, he's a 99. He's a 99 in Madden. He's as good as it gets. And look, I'm not sitting here saying that GMs are making decisions based on Madden ratings. That's not my point. But if you're a player who catches fire on social media because of your Madden rating in a positive way, that helps you. Of course it does. And it's really, really something that has taken off, I think, more than I ever thought it would. When we first went down there and met the Madden ratings adjuster 7 years ago, it was starting to be a big deal, but it wasn't a thing yet. Now it's a thing. It's a thing that people look forward to and debate every year. So, and to your point about them saying stuff to Charles and I, they do, and they get really passionate about it. It's the number one thing that people want to talk about, and they do get angry with us about the Madden ratings, and we do have to remind them we have absolutely nothing to do with that. We're just taking the commentary that they hand us and recording it to put it in the game. But, man, if I was those Madden ratings adjusters, I would duck when I'm out there on the streets because there's some angry people.
People get very upset about it, but they love the game. Brandon Gaudin, voice of Madden. The game drops tomorrow. Brandon, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
You guys, thanks for having me. Always appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Brandon Gaudin joining us here on 3 and Out. The new Madden dropping tomorrow. And I said, I can imagine coming up, trying to grab a bite, and somebody's like, why'd they make me an 82? I had nothing to do that. Well, can you pass along a message? Not really, but okay. Well, I should be a 94. Like, okay. But I mean, it is amazing. You said, Ben, that culturally it has gone from a thing where it's just was meant to be a fun thing. Like, hey, we'll give them a rating so that the computer could say this is how good the player is going to be in the game, the attributes, all that. To now people are like, wait a minute, so you're saying I'm not good? I'm like, no, it's a video game, bro. Like that is you, but it's not you. But people get really upset about it.
If there was ever a man validator as far as like how we look at sports, I think that has to be like what they doing in the Madden Raiders. Because Kevin, like you just said, it's like this. No one can go back to your high school days or when you played, but just imagine if they could. I'm sorry, go back to 89, right? What does it say? I wasn't 89. Where were you? 87. That means I was better because that's what they said.
I'd have been like a 36.
I was blessed enough when I was with the Titans to go through the locker room, and I'm asking guys what their Madden rating was. And when I tell you a microcosm of how they saw themselves came out of the ratings, I said, the highest you could be is 99. Well, I'm 98. You were 98, and the highest you could be? Okay. And when I started giving them, no, you like I started saying words like 81 and 82, guys looking at me like this. Well, Troop, you a hater. I'm sorry. I'm just reporting what happened. I don't control what happens. Good luck to Brandon. Good luck to Charles. They're going to have to get reservations under new names.
What's it like being in a video game?
It's humbling. It's humbling because at the end of the day, I just know this. I like it. I appreciate it. That's the new thing with kids. Now, when you play, were you on Madden? Hey, man, I put you in the game and I took you out while you was only this and you was only that. I say, hey, man, I appreciate being ranked and all these different things in the Madden Raiders. But yes, being on 5 of the Madden has always been a blessing. Got a chance to meet John Madden, man. May he rest in peace. He is the GOAT.
And Ben is in a very unique category. BJ, I don't know if you know this, but Ben has been in Madden. He has killed a video game and been around long enough to see its resurrection.
So I will say this. I never said anything about getting Madden, but whenever the college football comes out, I'm gonna buzz Philippe to get Kevin to come down from his mansion, and I'm gonna make sure I'm gonna say, Philippe, could you summon Kevin so he can come get his college football game?
Well, we definitely want to explore that a little further. We'll get to that when we come back. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio, streaming live, ESPNCoastal.com. Good to have you back. Here it is, 3 and Out. Good to have Brandon Gaudin on the show. And Ben, we mentioned, killed college football on the
Killed it.
video game. And now it's coming back a year from now.
Ed O'Bannon killed it. I got my $50.
For the price of one game, Ben
All I'm
said,
saying is,
all
listen,
you folks out there that love this game, it's no more.
I'm gonna buy you.
I mean, hello, I would like one.
You want to play college football all of a sudden? You a FIFA fan, ain't you?
Well, look, I'll play multiple video games.
Also, not. So you finna get another TV?
Well, I mean, I just think you owe one copy to everybody.
I mean, do I? What statute of limitations? How long is it got to be? So I got to get it to you. Like, I gotta hit up producer Jim because I think Kevin.
Oh, you owe
producer
Jim a copy.
No. Kevin owed Jim something, but the statute of limitations hasn't run out for Kevin and producer Jim.
I no longer need to do that. Bill Bender coming up, final hour of the program. Also, we'll hear from Corey McCartney, and Deshaun Watson had his punishment handed out by the National Football League. All that and more coming up in the final hours. We count you down towards Mets and Braves, Fried and DeGrom. It's 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network. Final hour of the show, college football. The countdown is on. A week from Saturday, we will have college football. And joining us here, covers college football for the Sporting News, Bill Bender joins us here on 3 Now. Bill, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you guys?
We're doing fantastic, and want to start off with the news. The Big Ten, a 7-year deal, $7 billion, and is obviously this is just the beginning, as the SEC is going to get a new deal fairly soon. Is this kind of the beginning of the I wouldn't even call it a financial divide, just the financial crater that's going to exist between the Big Ten, the SEC, and everybody else?
Yeah, and obviously talking about billions of dollars, and you're talking about how a college football Saturday is going to increasingly look like an NFL Sunday because they're going to put their big games in these windows. There's no doubt about that. Because the SEC is going to make a bunch of money off ESPN too. I get what they're doing, but to me, it doesn't matter a lot because I'm going to find the games anyway. I have a remote control and just change where I'm turning it. But for those networks and those entities, yeah, it's a humongous deal.
For the SEC, do they look at this deal as kind of the starting point for the next wave of conversations? I mean, how does the SEC, you think, view this deal of $1 billion per year?
Oh, I mean, they've got competition. I mean, on the field, the SEC is the best conference in college football. Off the field, Big Ten can run with them because it goes coast to coast, and they have all the. I mean, to me, it's like each conference has, and I've pointed this stat out quite a bit over the last month or so, but each conference now has. The SEC has 6 of the top 12 all-time winningest programs. The Big Ten has 5, and they essentially have Notre Dame in that spotlight too, competing with the SEC. So those are the 12 schools that everybody cares about, and pretty even. So I think the SEC is going to have to continue to work to maintain that spot atop kind of the pecking order of these conferences.
And Bill, even sticking with that, a lot of people are making about what goes on the field. But when you talk about brand equity, when you talk about how the Big Ten is going to go, much farther, have a much farther stretch, geographically than the SEC. Does it come down to traditions and brand equity and all these different things? Like you said, it's all about timing as well, because the Big Ten will go ahead and put it out 7 years, $7 billion, and it seems as though the SEC, everybody's kind of saying, okay, what is the SEC going to do? And is the Big Ten done adding teams?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great saying. I say it all the time. Timing is everything. Whether you're coaching, playing, or competing in this arena in this way, I mean, it really does matter. So I think, to answer your question, I think the Big Ten isn't done adding, but I'll say this. If Notre Dame stays on its own, which all indications are it is, and the SEC is not in a hurry to expand, I think we could have the conferences as we had them for a minute, unless the Big Ten decides, hey, we need more West Coast schools. So we're going to go get Oregon, Washington, Cal, Stanford, make a 20-team league and run with it from there. And that could happen. So, but it's crazy times. If you guys would have told me, if I came on your show 3 years ago and one of you says, hey, by the way, Bill, Texas and Oklahoma going to the SEC, at UCLA and USC, they're going to be in the Big Ten. I was just I go back to when I was a college kid and people were telling me these things. It's crazy.
Yeah, Bill, it's ever-changing landscape. Bill Bender, Sporting News, joining us here. And when you hear the Big Ten throw out $80 to $100 million per school, how does the sport compete with that? Obviously, the Big Ten on the field, off the field, SEC, they'll be okay. How does a league like the ACC, Big 12, Pac-12 stay relevant when they're saying we're paying out mid-20s, maybe we can get up to 30 in the long ACC's in a long-term rights deal, and our 2 biggest competitors, the SEC, the Big Ten, are paying 4 times that amount?
I don't know how they run with that. I think the ACC will be okay as long as Notre Dame keeps that 5-game arrangement. I do. I think they'll be like the third conference, and we don't know what the next iteration of the playoffs going to look like. But I think the ACC will have a place in it. The Big Ten or the Big 12, remarkable how they've been able to kind of maintain where they're at despite losing their 2 biggest brands. I still think they're in a decent spot. So it's just going to depend on what the setup of the next playoff is. But in terms of money and revenue and power and those kind of, abstract things, the Big Ten and the SEC are kind of dwarfing and lapping everybody right now.
Talks now, or at least reports, that theoretically could one day college football separate from the NCAA. Does all of this, the money, the media rights, kind of play into that? And how do you, I guess, receive and process that information that we could have a college football that exists outside of the NCAA?
It could. I mean, you've heard people openly talk about it. I mean, NIL's been a true game changer for that in terms of people are, the college athletes making more money out in the open like never before, and it's a good thing. So I think if they did break off, again, I use this phrase all the time, the sport is going to continue to start to feel like the NFL in some good ways. But some of the charm, the tradition, the things we're used to, those are being taken away.
Bill, what is the most surprising? The fact that we have $100 million coaches now. Yes, players, certain players, depending on the school they are benefited from NIL. Or is it conference realignment to the point where, if it's 2022 where you already got a 7-year, $7 billion deal, what are we saying in 2030? Are we saying, $20 billion deals? Because I think that at the end of the day, somebody would have told me, quote, amateurism or whatever you want to call it would have led to all this. I would have been like, was it ever amateurism, or was it we're gonna make you focus on the players because there's so many more of them and a lot less institutions who are getting big time money, and all these chancellors and ADs that are walking away from sports is because they've made a lot of money in the last couple of years to where I don't want to be a part of the new thing because I've benefited greatly of the old thing.
Yeah, and a lot of coaches, too, like how do you because a lot of coaches could go, you're seeing a trend. Is it easier to be an NFL coach? It might be. It might be easier to be an NFL coach in this day and age because there's not general managers. You've heard coaches talk openly about that might be coming, that we'll have more and more kind of general manager types within this. That makes sense to a certain extent, to me at least. So all of those things, the sport could look totally different in 10 years. It certainly looks different now. And I think part of it is, you guys brought that up earlier, do they indeed break away from the NCAA? And then what does that look like? Is it how many schools? I mean, like, are we talking 30 that could actually win this thing? I think this year there's actually only 5 or 6 that can seriously entertain winning a national championship.
And Bill, you kind of threw it out there. Given that there's only 5 or 6 that could win the national championship, how big is the gap between those 5 and everybody else in college football? Because it seems like the same 4 or 5 that can win a national championship are the same 4 or 5 that people have been throwing out for the last 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, I think there's 4 this year that could probably win it. Ohio State, Alabama, Georgia is a maybe, just because of what they're doing. And then Notre Dame's kind of the bridge to me. They're a school that obviously they've won 10 or more games the last 5 years, but when they get on that playoff stage, it's tough. And I really think 5 through 15, case for or against any of them, and that ranges from like a Michigan or an Oklahoma or a Texas A&M in terms of how can they actually win it. I don't think so.
You mentioned Georgia, obviously the defending national champs. While we have you on, what are your thoughts on the Bulldogs as a leading contender? You have a lot to replace defensively, but you've recruited, of course, extremely well. Stetson Bennett back at quarterback. How do you see the Bulldogs in 2022?
I mean, they'll be really good, and that's oversimplifying it. I mean, I think I saw Pat Forty's piece on Stetson Bennett. You have him back, you're going to have a pretty good offense. I mean, the big question is, how do you offset losing that many guys to the NFL draft players? That's what I'm anxious to see. I mean, Alabama's proven they can do that all the time. Ohio State's proven they can do that. LSU had a hard time doing that a few years ago, but I would say the difference with that is almost all of those guys were on the offensive side. And Kirby's done a fantastic job of stockpiling, recruiting, developing defensive talent. So I still think, you look at their schedule, feels like 12-0 or 11-1, and we're doing it all over again. They're probably back in Atlanta facing the Crimson Tide again.
Bill, I mean, back when I was in the National Football League, I asked the coach, like, what is all this about? I want to win. He said, what is it about? He said, man, the Dallas Cowboys is all you need to know. I said, what you mean? He said, cuz they don't win the Super Bowl, but they're the biggest brand. How is that? Because it's about branding. That's what I think college football is, because the two teams that make the most money is Texas A&M. Neither one of them going to win that championship. They're not even going to win their conferences. And you look at the fact now, good brands benefit from bad seasons. Smaller brands can't even benefit from good seasons. So when you think about where it's going, if the money is what it is now, and Alabama, Clemson, Georgia, Notre Dame, Ohio State, they ain't going nowhere the next 10 years. Is it more about the brand than the actual winning on the field? Because if the product sells, if the product is noteworthy, people, as you mentioned, you're going to be looking for them on the clicker, even if you're at your house.
I'm a Packers fan, so I love pointing out anytime we can like kind of rip on the Cowboys. I'm okay with that because they ruined my childhood with all those Super Bowls. But it's been a while. They haven't won a Super Bowl since I was a sophomore in high school. So, and you're exactly right. It's like I always tell people, I kind of scoff at the notion of when people say that, hey, Texas is irrelevant, or Notre Dame is irrelevant, or Michigan is irrelevant. I'm like, no, they're not, because they have all this money and revenue and popularity. Texas is the one that I'm really anxious to see what happens over the next couple of years because of NIL, because Arch Manning is coming to campus, and that popularity that you talked about is going to soar even more because everybody's going to be interested in them. And does that lead to a national championship? Can Arch do what Vince Young was able to do? And you look back at Vince Young, he took a lot of criticism his first couple of years before he finally broke through and did it. So I think that's really what people are going to watch with Texas over the next few years.
And Bill, I know, when it comes to college football as a whole, I'm always torn in between what are you lacking? Is it the head coach or is it the quarterback? Because you mentioned Vince Young and what he's done, what he did for Texas. Do you think when it comes to a brand like Texas, are they a quarterback away, or is it about just having a coach there that's going to be there for the next 10 years that can eventually do what Mac Brown did?
I think the coach, they're going to have some talent at quarterback the next couple of years, with Quinn Ewers and Arch coming behind him. But I mean, I tell people about Texas every year. They haven't had a top 50 defense since 2009. So until that changes, that's how the inexplicable losses happen. When you can't stop somebody, when you can't get a clutch stop, that's how Kansas happens. That's how an embarrassing loss to Iowa State happens. Those kind of things. So Texas needs to fix that defense and be able to stop people. And they're going to be able to score 30 to 35, maybe even 40 points a game this year with that offense. So, but can they get the stops behind it?
Bill Bender, Sporting News, our guest here on 3 and Out. Bill, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
Hey, thanks, guys. Take care.
Appreciate him joining us here on 3 and Out. Does a great job covering college football, and we will have games coming up 1 week from Saturday in college football. But yeah, the Big Ten, huge money, $7 billion over 7 years. Big Ten saying $80 to $100 million per school over 16 schools at the end of this thing. A lot of cheese floating around college football. We got more to come. It is 3 and Out on the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. BJ and Ben, glad you are. Thursday, Deshaun Watson, the breaking news, gets an 11-game suspension, up from 6, a $5 million fine. There, Ben and BJ, so it goes up from what the judge originally had said, which was 6 games and wasn't going to be a fine. So reaction, Ben and BJ, to, I guess, now the second ruling on Deshaun Watson and how this played out.
I am happy at the fact that the NFL and NFLPA was able to come to a decision of, and obviously Deshaun Watson agreeing to the 11-game suspension. But make no mistake about this entire situation. Reputation won in this situation because the Cleveland Browns, the entire Cleveland Brown organization, wanted him to get 0 games. 0. They let it play out in court. The court said that he's not guilty. That doesn't mean he didn't do anything. He settled. And in his mind, hey, man, I've dotted all the I's, I've crossed all the T's. Then public perception comes out. Judge rules 4 games. People like, what is that? Deshaun Watson comes out right before the preseason game and says, I apologize. And he said specifically, I apologize not to the ladies involved, but to what it caused. So public perception. Today, he's obviously, making the rounds, but yes, 11 games, $5 million. He get the and his first game back would be what? Surprise, surprise, at Houston against the Texans. But I think sometimes with a guy like Deshaun Watson, what makes people kind of not like the NFL is when they protect the guys like Deshaun Watson as far as, because you know what, Kevin, you and BJ both know, $5 million to a guy like Deshaun Watson who's going to make $230 million. That is, if that's even a slap on the wrist, but I am happy at the fact that he had some games.
Well, you mentioned a lot of people said, hey, he'll be back, ironically, against Houston, but he won't have played.
No,
right? Because once you're suspended, you can't be at the facility.
Can't be
so you can't just walk in after 11 weeks.
And I don't know for certain what the Cleveland Browns are doing to, quote, monitor him, but I know they are going to do that. Like, I'm sorry, but Deshaun Watson, away from football, has proven to be very, very problematic. So I don't know what Cleveland's going to do to make sure that he is indeed not, getting himself in any trouble. I don't know, but 11 games, $5 million, it is more. So I do think that for one time, at least in my, football career, or at least now post-career, the NFL and the NFLPA actually did the right thing. Because this is the same NFLPA, by the way, that didn't want him to get a game. So while they agreed to it, they knew, well, dude, it's not going to go back. Like, it went from 4 to 11. They're going to keep going. The NFLPA, the Cleveland Browns, and Deshaun Watson thought he should get 0 games. Make no mistake about it. But Roger Goodell gets involved. It's going to, former district attorneys and judges. Hey, man, you take it out of the jurisdiction of the National Football League and public reception, BJ, as you know, won. So, Deshaun, 2 things. Please stop doing interviews. Oh, my God, because every time you open up your mouth, what are you talking about? And number 2, the Cleveland Browns, they actually feel as though they got the short end of the stick because they think the actual penalty is very, very aggressive.
Well, it had to be more than 6 games.
Yes.
And I know a lot of people wanted it to be a full season. That was Roger Goodell's public stance,
Sure.
that it needed to be a full season, but more than 6 games, almost double that. You get to 11, you have the $5 million fine. It also says in the news story, this is from a Jake Trotter, ESPN staff writer, Watson will undergo mandatory evaluation by behavioral experts and follow their suggested treatment program. So this is more than was the initial suspension. And I think around football, around the country, everybody said, hey, there's got to be more than this. This 6-game suspension is not enough. Now you have 11. You have the $5 million fine to go with it, which that's not a ton of money when you think about the context that is there. But and then you also have the suggested treatment program that behavioral experts will suggest. This is a step in the right direction compared to what was, and it had to be more. It is more, and this is it, right? There's no more. There's no more appeals or whatever. But it had to be more than the 6 games, and now it's 11.
Yeah, and make no mistake about it, this makes us go away. All right, we're going to go on it, 48, 72-hour Deshaun Watson cycle, and then it goes away because we got to get right back to preseason football. We got to get back to regular football, college football. But Deshaun Watson, in the last 2 years, he's literally played no football, and he's made more headlines than people that do because of everything that's going on. But Cleveland knew. I mean, Cleveland knew it was going to happen. It did happen, and now you move on from it. Like I said, our thoughts definitely go out to the ladies involved because you're not going to hear from them. You know why? Them NDAs was flying out of there about as fast as you can name. But I will say, Deshaun Watson proves one thing that is still apparent. Super duper talented players gets benefited even if it's bad behavior. And until you're proven otherwise, if you are that gifted, what would make you think that what happens to me is going to really stick? I got $230 million. I hadn't played in a year. About to be almost 2 years. And guess what? Kyler Murray had to unfollow Arizona to get his. Lamar Jackson still hasn't got his. And these guys play. So, hey, I just think that for one time, the NFLPA got it right. And this is why Roger Goodell wants to stay out of stuff. He goes, look, I make a statement. I look good in the statement. I let it go to court twice. As far as like the NFL goes now, 11 games. And this is what happened. They told Deshaun, dude, take the 11 games. Why? They're not going to reduce it. Take the 11, deal with it, move on.
Well, I mean, I still look at it, and again, it's perception with Deshaun Watson, but I mean, Calvin Ridley got a whole year for
and you
for
haven't
going
heard
to Florida
from,
and betting under Calvin Ridley.
And you haven't heard from Calvin Ridley since. Well, you ain't heard from Calvin Ridley since you've seen his profile name. You ain't heard from him.
Yeah.
So,
well, I think that's to me where a lot of people look at the NFL and say you have a consistency problem when it comes to how you merit out punishment on folks. I mean, Calvin Ridley. Yeah, he's guilty of logging on as Calvin Ridley and placing a bet, which you're not supposed to do.
But got a whole season for that.
Well, at least a season. It's an indefinite suspension of at least a year with Calvin Ridley. So it could go longer. I don't think it will, but it could. They kind of left it open-ended. And Deshaun Watson, with obviously a lot of smoke around his situation, gets 11 games, and you had to go back to get 11 games. Because it wasn't going to even be that much. So I think that's going to be interesting. And as you said, Ben, for the NFL, it's, hey, we got games this weekend. College football is coming up. This fades into the background until week 12 when he's eligible to come back. Probably won't come back because he hadn't played football all year. And then week 13, he goes out there and he plays, and it's a big deal. And then week 14, we're probably not talking about it anymore. And you move on.
Yes, I think his suspension begins on August the 30th. He can come back in a limited capacity October 10th, and he can actually play on December the 4th. So we're not even going to hear from him.
You said the suspension starts. So is he going to play in the next preseason game?
I think up until the suspension starts, he's gonna. I think he can play, and I guess for the Browns, they're gonna probably let him play until he can. He can, like I said, he can come back for limited activities October the 10th and December the 4th. He'll actually be back out there. So, we won't even hear his name until October, hopefully, and then come December he'll be able to resume play.
Will there be more consistency moving forward in rulings? Kevin talked about how you have kind of the new, where it went to Judge Sue Robinson, and then you had the appeal, and then it went to the second, I guess, judicial review or the second review there. I mean, will there be more consistency now moving forward?
No, absolutely not. Because you always got two entities fighting against each other. You got the NFLPA versus the NFL, that being Roger Goodell. The NFLPA wants to look, even though we know it's fake, look like they are speaking on behalf of the players. I'm gonna say this until I'm proven other. The weakest PA and Players Association, for those of you who are thinking what PA is in all professional sports, it's the NFL. DeMar Smith, I'm sorry, but whatever the NFL tell him, he agrees to it. But hey, 11 games, $5 million fine. Suspension starts August the 30th. He can resume limited capacity activities October the 10th and December the 4th. He will be back against the Texans. And that, like I know Kevin and BJ, he's probably going to light it up against the Texans. And people are going to forget all about it. And the NFL knows it. The Cleveland Browns know it. And most importantly, Deshaun Watson.
We've got more to come here. It is 3 and Out all across the Southern Pigskin Radio Network. I'd love to hear from you. Hit us up on Twitter at Pigskin Radio. We are streaming live at ESPNCoastal.com. game number 4 of this 4-game series. It's Max Fried. It's Jacob deGrom. It doesn't get much better than that in Major League Baseball. Two guys that when they're out at their best, some of the best two in baseball. Max Fried going for his 11th win. Jacob deGrom, of course, that's coming back from injury. He is 2-0 with a 1.62 ERA. That is sick. That is disgusting. That is gross. That is all of those things there for Jacob deGrom and the Braves trying to crawl back into it here in the National League East. Our next guest, author of the book, Tales from the Atlanta Braves Dugout. You can catch his works on Battery Power on SB Nation as well. Corey McCartney joins us here on 3 and Out. Corey, welcome. How are you?
Hey, great. How's it going?
Doing fantastic. How do you classify tonight's game against the Mets? Is it must win to take 3 out of 4 to stay in this thing?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, you quantified this week as the biggest week of the year when you think about 4 against the Mets and then 3 to the Astros after this. So, I think if you're looking at this being the biggest week and you need to take 3 or 4 from the Mets and you've got Jacob deGrom and Max Fried, tonight feels like, potentially the biggest game of the season to this point in the season if you're going to stay in this and have designs on trying to come back and win a 5th straight National League East title. So, yeah, tonight is absolutely huge for the Braves.
What do you expect from Max Fried tonight? I know everybody talks about Jacob deGrom, and look, I mean, a 1.62 ERA, but Max Fried 10-4. I mean, he's in the mid 2s with his ERA. What do you expect from him? And could this be a game where 2 runs wins?
Yeah, I mean, I think obviously runs are going to be, at a premium when you think about, the 2 guys that you've got, pitching. I'm interested to see how long Max is able to go. We've not heard any hangups whatsoever about, things with him coming off of that concussion. He's held this Mets offense, by and large, pretty much under check. I mean, Jeff McNeil is really the only guy that's had a lot of success against him. I mean, Charlie Marte's hit over 300, but, for the most part, he's really held a lot of these guys, in check. So I think it sets up, for him to kind of to match up. And, you go back to the start of the 2020 season, Max Fried in games against teams with winning records, he has the best ERA in the majors among starters, the best winning percentage among starters. So certainly this is a guy you want in this situation.
I mean, Vaughn Grissom, you're talking about Michael Harris. I mean, Grossman, those guys, new guys. I mean, talk about their impact game in the game and how pivotal have they been in this Mets series?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Michael Harris second. The guy's a front runner for, Rookie of the Year right now. I think you could argue the only guy that could probably keep him from winning NL Rookie of the Year is his own teammate, Spencer Strider. So, he's been huge in terms of, what he's meant and not only, kind of solidifying that outfield defense and being able to, play center. And then at that point, it allowed Adam Duvall to be on one side and Ronald Acuna Jr. the other. But certainly, from an offensive standpoint, he's been the most productive number 9 hitter in baseball when he's been there. Vaughn Grissom has certainly, stepped in and been a key contributor. Since Ozzie Albies went down, they've had some of the worst second base production in the majors. Albies is traveling with the team this weekend in the next week as they hit the road. So, Grissom, what he'll do going forward remains to be seen, but certainly he's been a big piece. I think it's going to be interesting to see how they're able to work him in once Albies does return because he's been so good offensively. I think you got to find a way to keep that bat in the lineup.
Corey McCartney joining us here, and you mentioned Michael Harris gets the big deal. I mean, you're talking about 2 months basically in the major leagues, and you get a big extension. I know that's kind of becoming the way teams are trying to do things, giving guys their money before they have to. But you look at the impact. Is this a guy that we see doing things? And I hate to do this, but is this a guy that we see doing things in Atlanta that we have seen in center field since a guy named Andrew Jones showed up and did it?
I think that's certainly the hope. I mean, he just looks so fluid and so natural out there.
We're having a little trouble here with you, Corey. Hang on one second. We'll try to see if we can get that corrected. But yeah, Michael Harris, Alex Anthopoulos, he's done a couple things that you don't see a whole lot of teams do. Gave Ronald Acuna a deal before he needed to. Michael Harris has been in the big leagues for 2 months. About 2 months. He gets an 8-year deal. You just don't see that in baseball a lot. I know it's becoming a little bit more commonplace with your high prospects, but 2 months in the sample size of a baseball career is nothing, right? We've seen guys come up and play like Hall of Famers for 4 weeks, and then they disappear, and you go, what happened? I think we've got Corey back here on the phone. Corey, pick up. You were in the middle talking about Michael Harris there and what Alex Anthopoulos and the Braves obviously see from him.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, they're hoping this can be the best combination of offense and defense they've had in center field since Andrew Jones. And certainly, if he continues at this level, the gamble from his side is that if he continues at this level, he's a guy that could be a $20 to $30 million a year kind of player at the end of this contract, and the Braves could have a monumental gamble from the Braves end if this is as good as it gets. There's certainly the end of it that you were buying at the high end for a product, but certainly. I mean, he has a chance to be really special, and I know they're really happy to have him for the next 8 years, if not 10, with those options.
And we lost him. I don't know what happened, BJ. You look at Alex Anthopoulos did kind of address this. He said, look, he goes, I looked around at the Falcons, and I see empty seats. Mm-hmm. I see people not there. Mm-hmm. But when you win, people show up and said, we started winning. We've won the division 4 years in a row. People show up. People don't realize this, but Liberty Media owns that Battery section, which is restaurant. When you're winning, people show up there and spend money. So when you're turning up, showing out, and you're having events in and around the Battery that people show up to, spend money. I mean, they were full kind of outside the park, outside the stadium when the Braves were in the World Series in Houston, watching the Braves, spending money in the Battery. And they're like, hey, when we're making money doing that, we can spend money to make sure that you keep coming back and having a good time. And it seems like that philosophy from Alex Anthopoulos is really setting the Braves up to be very good for a long time.
Yeah, Kevin, I mean, because Alex Anthopoulos understands that, listen, the Braves is the one thing that we all can agree with in the state of Georgia, right? That's the one thing we all can come together with. Falcons, Atlanta United, the Hawks, but when it comes to the Braves, and he knows this, look, I mean, the best product, right, is when I don't got to sell a product, right, that's out there looking the best on the, out there on the field. And we got defending World Series champs. So think about the guys that just got there. They go to them saying, man, good job last year. And they just got here. So I do think that Alex Anthopoulos understands the best product. It can be sold much easier when they actually going out there and getting it done.
We've got Corey back here with us. And Corey, you've got a team tonight that almost came back and put one on the Mets last night. How do you ride that momentum going into tonight's ball game against a guy that, if you're not patient, it can be really quick innings?
Yeah, I mean, we know. Sorry about that, guys. My wife actually called me, and I hit the wrong button, so I apologize for that. As a guy who hosts a radio show, I know how troublesome radio technology can be sometimes. But yeah, I mean, obviously, Jacob deGrom is as good as it gets right now. I mean, you're talking about having faced him and Scherzer on back-to-back nights, two of the best pitchers of the last 20 years. You almost came through on a night when Scherzer pitched, and now you got to go against deGrom, who's just been a monster since he's come back off the IL. So, I mean, it's a tall task. I mean, he carved up this Braves offense last time. They used just the swing and the misses on the sliders from him this season. Guys, he's got almost 60% swing and miss rate on that slider, the ones that he's thrown this point in the season. So you got to be patient. I mean, he's just so good. And I think this is going to be a major test for this team. This is what you worried about early in the season when you let the Mets get that lead and you couldn't get those early wins. When they got healthy, when they had these two together, how good they were going to be. So, I mean, this is going to be good. It's as good as it gets from both sides in terms of pitching. So we'll see what momentum they can carry from the way they came back last night. But if you let deGrom go into this game, and if he's able to throw 90 pitches, which may be the out number for him on his fourth start, I mean, it could be a long night for the Braves.
Corey, when you look at the Braves, I mean, you're the defending World Series champions. You're in the mix for the playoffs right now. You could win the East again. And with all the young talent, guys that are 22, 23, 24 or younger, the long contracts, I mean, this is a team that is poised to be good for a really long time, in addition to being the World Series champions and being really good right now.
Without question. I mean, certainly Alex Anthopoulos and Michael Harris were talking about this yesterday at the press conference, just this culture that they've built. And, guys want to stay there. Guys are willing to, take deals that they ultimately know are going to be below market value to stay there because they want to play there. Obviously, right now, it's puts them in a fantastic spot. But look, I mean, I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer in any way, shape, or form. But don't forget, it wasn't that long ago that we saw the Braves wrap up Freddie Freeman, Craig Kimbrell, Andrelton Simmons, Julio Teheran, on and on and on. They were signing these extensions, and only one of those guys ended up playing that whole thing out. So, I mean, everybody's got a plan, that's as the old saying goes, but certainly, they are set up on paper anyway to be a team that can not only have this core intact for a long time, but because of the values of these contracts they have, they could bring, a couple guys in at $20 million a year extra to supplement that. So, I think they have a chance to be a really special team for a really long time.
Corey McCartney, Battery Power, and also author of Tales from the Atlanta Braves Dugout, our guest here on 3 and Out. Corey, appreciate the time. Thanks so much.
All right, guys, appreciate it. Sorry about the issues there.
Hey, that's all right. We certainly know those things happen. We appreciate it. Corey McCartney joining us here on 3 and Out. Just absolutely huge ball game tonight. Braves and the Mets, DeGrom versus Max Fried. We're coming right back. A lot to get to. It's 3 and Out, Southern Pigskin Radio Network.
What a matchup we have tonight. Pitching matchup coming up in just a little bit. The Atlanta Braves and New York Mets finish up a 4-game series in Atlanta, a very important series, needless to say, as you will have Max Fried on the mound for the Atlanta Braves. He is 10-4 with a 2.6 ERA. Jacob deGrom on the mound for the Mets, obviously about as good as it gets, 2-0 with a 1.62 ERA. I think we've talked to a number of people who say, listen, Atlanta needs to win this series to have a realistic shot at winning the East. Well, that depends on winning tonight. If you win tonight, 3 out of 4, you take that. If you lose tonight, even after the momentum of the great start, it's a split, and you ultimately don't gain any ground. So big game tonight. And then, oh, by the way, you have the Houston Astros this weekend. So a huge stretch of games for the Atlanta Braves. We've talked to a couple of different Braves analysts who have said this is the biggest game of the season. Braves and Mets, Fried and deGrom, you're what, 4.5 games back? There's a big difference in 5.5 and 3.5. It's a 2-game swing. Couple of minutes left. We'll bring in PJ Zuko of Second Down. And PJ, I guess just sticking with this, Fried and deGrom tonight. The Braves have had a lot of good news, a lot of good baseball recently, but this is playoff baseball tonight, right? I mean, this is a playoff atmosphere.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And you feel more confident, and it feels more like a playoff atmosphere, I feel like, now that you know who the starters are, right? We were talking about yesterday, a kind of an undecided situation with the Braves pitching matchup, but you knew they were going to be going up against the ace there for the Mets. And with Fried there, I feel like you feel a little bit more confident in this type of matchup. But yeah, you want to keep that momentum rolling for sure with the Braves and this just kind of hot streak that they've been on lately. And this is probably the most viable, I feel like, they've kind of felt like going into a Mets series. Sure, a little bit earlier in the year, you had the big streak and everything like that, and they were on fire. The Mets kind of cooled you off a little bit there. There were some day games involved in that too, and we all know the Braves' day games haven't been the best experience so far throughout the year. And kind of from that point on, back and forth, the Mets have really kind of been the ones to cool off the Braves. Well,
I mean, you have to give it to them. I know
Kevin
crazy. Has always talked about, right, the impending Mets meltdown. They've been great. I mean, they really have been.
They've been really solid. I've been impressed with their lack of a meltdown so far. It's really just been the Braves getting better and better. Maybe this is where the meltdown starts for the Mets. Maybe the Braves kind of trigger it and kick it in a high gear, and we'll see if they can do that. But yeah, everything's out on the table, man. This is like a buffet line. You finally get to the dessert, and that's what you've been waiting on this whole time. Now you just can't mess it up. You can't go walk up there and say, oh, you're too full. You can't have any more. No, keep going. Scarf it down, man. Let's take advantage of this if you're the Bravos. So yeah, looking forward to seeing what happens tonight.
Huge game tonight. We'll send you off to Atlanta in just a moment. It's Max Fried, 10-4 with a 2.60 ERA against Jacob deGrom, 2-0 with a 1.62 ERA. And again, the difference, 3.5 back or 5.5 back, depending upon what happens tonight. Want to thank Corey McCartney, Battery Power, author of the book Tales from the Atlanta Braves, Dugout, for joining us on the show. Also, Chaz Sutton, former South Carolina and Jenkins defensive lineman, Kylie McDaniel, ESPN baseball insider, Brandon Gaudin, the voice of Madden. That comes out tonight at midnight, and Bill Bender of the Sporting News. We will see you tomorrow here on 3 and Out.